Although the human mind is a magnificent evolutionary marvel, it is also capable of horrifying exploits. The pages of history have sung about horrible tales of torture, human cruelty, and the sadistic pleasure that both individuals and groups of people derive from witnessing others in excruciating misery. Herein lies 10 gruesome ways individuals were executed in ages past. Number 10. Crucifixion stands at the top of this macabre list. This was done in the ancient world and right up until the 20th century. The Assyrians and Babylonians were the first to introduce it, followed by the Persians, Alexander the Great, and the Phoenicians, who started it in Rome in the 3rd century BC. Crucifixion entails being nailed or fastened to a wooden beam, usually a cross. To bear the person's weight, nails were drilled through the bones below the wrist. The placement was considered excellent because no major arteries were hit, only the median nerve, which would cause the fingers to seize and the hands to stretch down in a painful contracture. The feet were attached to the cross's vertical section, and when the legs deteriorated, the arms were forced to support the torso, pulling the shoulders out of their sockets. With the arms now several inches longer, the elbows and wrist would soon follow. The chest had to hold the body's weight at this point, resulting in asphyxiation and eventual death. Number 9. Rat torture is definitely deserving of its place on the top 10 worst tortures. The thing about rats is that they eat through anything. Thus, it comes as no great surprise that humans made a torture device out of them in the ancient world. A rat was typically placed inside a small cage near the victim's abdomen. The rat became distraught when the cage was heated from the outside using a candle, a torch, or hot coals. So how did it get away? Clawing its way through the only soft surface available, the human's skin. The rat would soon chew its way into the victim's guts, causing excruciating pain in the process. This method effectively extracted information from detainees while also playing on their psyches, giving the torture a psychological component. Number 8. The rack was another well-known torture device in ancient times. It consisted of a wooden table with axles and levers on both ends. After being forced to lie down, the victim's wrists and heels were bound with leather straps and belts. The straps were attached to chains or ropes that coiled around the axles. The torturers would then slowly push the levers, forcing the axles to revolve and the chains to tighten. The prisoner's body was gradually pulled outwards as the straps dug into their skin. The internal physical turmoil that one would have suffered is hard to swallow. Vertebrae expanded, joints, muscles, and tendons gave way. Posture changed. The rib cage pressurized the lungs. Bones shattered. Nerve endings became exposed. The pain would have been near unimaginable. As a bonus for the especially tough, they were placed on spiked axles that stripped their back of its flesh. Number 7. The horrible agony of Keelhaulin ranks at number 7 on our list of the most brutal ways to die in the ancient world. The phrase Keelhaulin derives from the Dutch word keelhalen, which means to pull along the keel, exactly what this torture method achieved. The sailor was stripped, roped, and suspended from the ship's mast by the rope, their legs weighted or chained. Once the sailor was released, the rope was coiled beneath the ship and pulled under the keel. The fatality rate was usually 100%, however, if the individual did not die, the frequent hitting on the keel caused serious head damage, as well as extensive lacerations from barnacles and other aquatic growth. Number 6. The wheel, also known as the execution wheel, breaking wheel, or Catherine wheel, is the next kind of torture. In the ancient world, this brutal contraption was only employed for public executions. The prisoner was usually tethered to a big wooden spoked wheel, though there were few modifications throughout history. The intention was to severely mutilate them rather than kill them initially, with the executioners shattering their leg bones first and working their way up. They would accomplish this by thrashing the victim with an iron bar until they were nearly dead, crushing all of their bones and bludgeoning them. Once finished, the now ghastly maimed prisoner would be repositioned on the wheel so that their heels came together at the back of their neck. Number 5. Impalement, sitting halfway on our list, is a grotesquely gory process. This old-world method of torture was used by many civilizations and cultures. It entailed impaling the victim with a long, sharp, and often greased stake for capital punishment, subduing revolts, reprimanding defectors, or eliminating military insubordination in times of war. There were 2 approaches to this method, longitudinal and transverse. The subject was positioned above the spike, which was placed halfway up their back privates for longitudinal. The spike would run them through when gravity took hold, avoiding important organs and exiting through the skin of their shoulder or neck. This might keep a person alive for several days. Otherwise, the stake was poked through the torso either from front to back or vice versa. This was the transversal method. Although number 4 is debatable if it was a torture method that was real or only a literary fabrication, it was devised by a troubled mind. Late skaldic poetry first mentions this, the blood eagle rite. The victim would be kept alive by having their back sliced open, their ribs separated from their spine, and their lungs dragged through the incision to produce a pair of gory wings. It's difficult to imagine someone remaining conscious long enough to accomplish this. Nevertheless, if the Viking sagas are to be believed, this technique has truly earned its place as one of the most terrible, agonizing, and terrifying ways to die. Number 3. The consumption of molten gold takes third place. The Romans and the Spanish Inquisition may have done this more frequently than is documented, notably on both sides of the Atlantic. The method is self-explanatory. The victim is tied and forced to open their mouth as heated gold is poured down their throat. The distal organs would be severely damaged and the lungs would be blistered, resulting in a rapid death. Number 2. Because of its brutal way of execution, the next torture method almost takes the top rank. Because of its slowness, flaying or skinning was possibly the most excruciating of the ancient world execution procedures. The victim was stripped and their hands and feet were restrained to prevent them from moving. After that, the executioner would begin removing the prisoner's skin with a sharp blade, usually starting with the head because it would cause the greatest amount of pain possible. Parts of the person's body were even cooked to soften the skin and make it easier to remove. Shock, blood or fluid loss, hypothermia, and infection were all possible causes of death from flaying. It could take anywhere from a few hours to a few days for someone to die from this method. And finally, we come down to number 1. The Roman candle ranks first among all other terrible ways to die in the ancient world. This is terrifying on numerous levels, whether it's because of the execution manner or because of the executioner themselves. Nero, the Roman emperor, is one of history's most brutal and psychotic characters. He despised Christians so severely that he used them as torches or human candles at his garden parties. First, the victims were tied and nailed to tall stakes. Then, flammable liquid was poured over them before they were set alight. The fire was set to start at their feet to prolong their suffering. Whether the Christians had rebelled against him or not, this was a monstrous way to go. It reflects how barbaric punishments were in antiquity and how they were often born of man's vicious ego and thirst to dominate what he considered a lesser people. So, what do you think of this list of brutal punishments and executions? Do you think that you would have found one more pleasant than another? Are there any other executions you would like discovered and discussed in the future? Please leave your comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.